Hello everyone. In this video I'm going to explain the changes I've made for week 11. I'm going to give you some instructions on how the graded task for week 11 now works, or the graded task, but just very brief, just the gist, and then you'll get more instructions based on which option you're going to be choosing. And I'll be presenting tips on choosing among the options that I've given you for this week. In creating week 11 and looking at what I traditionally lecture on for Kant, that normally takes a full 2 hours and 40 minutes. He has a very complicated theory, even more complicated than in some ways, and well, maybe not so much more complicated, but it's really difficult to understand. He has a very different way of thinking. His concepts are very abstract compared to utilitarianism. One thing that's appealing about utilitarianism is that it seems intuitive, it seems very practical, it's very empirical. But Kant's way of thinking is very different. And I didn't want to lecture you on a bunch or give a lecture or give lectures and make you take a bunch of notes and use all that time and not give you enough time to do some writing for a grade. And so I was thinking about Friday and Saturday. I was like thinking, okay, look, well, what can I pull from Kant that might be the most interesting or the most important? And so then what I remembered was what I had you write in the week 9 essay for task 2, and that was whether or not you thought you deserved moral praise because of a sacrifice that you're making given governmental responses to COVID-19. And I realized that that was telling me immediately what to focus on in Kant. And so basically, I have set up something to where we eliminate a lot of time that would have been spent in lecture and note taking. So hopefully we'll find it if you were looking for this material on Sunday and you had to wait until now. Hopefully you'll have found it worthwhile and realize that, I really was trying to think of you guys. So a lot of lectures taken out, at least an hour and a half or 2 hours. This will be time that will be freed up for writing. So now, instead of having more lessons on Kant, basically the Smart Books gave you the lessons gave you the general introduction and the lecture points that you needed. And I've chosen this book because it's very down to earth and very understandable. So that said, what you're going to now have is you're not going to have any separate video lessons just on Kant like I did for Bentham's utilitarianism during week 10. If I need you to know something specific or in more detail for Kant, you're going to learn that as needed if you pick the option for the graded task that has to do with Kant. So you do have only one task now. That's going to be worth 5% as noted in the course schedule, and it's still a writing task. Another change that I made was I was going to have you talk about both theories and apply them both to your week 9 task 2 essay. I've decided, given, how busy we are and, just trying to be a little bit more sensitive and compassionate with the fact, that we're going through a lot of changes and whatnot, that you only had to write about one philosopher and apply one philosopher's thinking to your own thinking. So now I'm going to give you some tips on how to choose between your options. So as you can see, there are two options, option A and option B. One thing to keep in mind is that whatever option you choose, everyone is going to submit their the work that they did for that option, their writing assignment. Everyone will submit in the same link. So before you go in here and look at all the details, I thought I would just give you a tip on how to choose. So in option A, basically, you're going to take all of the lecture notes and you're going to apply a lot of that, primarily the principle of utility and the hedonic calculus, and you're going to apply that to one of the sacrifices that you talked about in the week 9 task 2 essay. And so, of course, I give you the instructions, I give you I give you some questions to help you develop that. So if you would like to apply something that you got a traditional lecture on, if you would like to apply a theory that seems more intuitive, that seems easier to understand, if you like to think in terms of pros and cons, this might be the option for you to pick here. All right. Now, what's the appeal of option B for some people? Well, if you would rather talk about the meaning of moral praise and what it means to be morally praiseworthy, and whether or not you deserve moral praise for a COVID-19 induced sacrifice, then you might want to pick option B. So for option B, you would be focusing on 6 or 7 specific pages in the SmartBook reading, the first 6 or 7 pages or so that focus on Kant's duty ethics, aka deontology. In here, what I tell, so and then there's like two smaller assignments that you do. So this is one big assignment, and then this is one mini assignment, and then one medium-sized assignment. So in this one, what I have you do is I give you a form to fill out, and what it does is it makes you go into the Kant reading, into the first 6 or 7 pages, and I tell you which pages to go to, and I have you do sentence completion. So there's a couple of things where you have to answer in your own words, but most of it's sentence completion. And what I'm getting you to do is go and find the exact information you need from the first 6 or 7 pages of Kant to do 2 paragraphs. You do have to submit your answers to the that you use the form to articulate, and you'll get more instructions about that. But you do have to submit that work. And what you're doing there is you're excavating the important points from the reading that you need to do the 2 paragraphs that you're going to do. And 20% of your grade is for that, just going into the book and finding the sentences to complete and then answering a few things in your own words. The other thing that you're going to do for 80% of your grade is you're going to do the kind of writing that you're somewhat used to. So this is kind of a new writing assignment, but not. So as you guys know, I often I give you a question, and then I have you take a position with respect to the question, and then I'll have you copy a sentence, and then I'll have you support what you're saying in your sentence with premises, reasons, explanations, conceptual clarification. So if you're used to that kind of writing and you prefer that kind of writing and you want to do like shorter units of writing, then you might want to pick option B. So the first question that I'm going to be asking you in option B for 40% of your grade is, would Kant, to what extent would Kant agree or disagree with how you defined what it means to be morally praiseworthy, or your concept of deserving moral praise? And to do that, you're going to go into the notes that you took, you're going to go into the reading to see that. And basically, I'll have you copy a sentence saying that Kant would agree or disagree with your concept of moral praise, that he would agree with it or that he wouldn't agree to it. So that would be your judgment, your conclusion. And then you would support with evidence from the SmartBook and evidence from your essay, whether or not you support your claim that he does or does not agree with your concept of moral praise with textual evidence from your original response, week 9, and then what the book says, Kant says. So you'd be supporting a claim, doing an argument in a paragraph form with respect to a very specific question, and that would be about a total of 6 sentences for 40% of your week 11 grade. So far we're at 60%. So the last thing I'm going to say is that in this video is that if you do choose option B, you do have a second prompt. So the second prompt will be the question of, would Kant agree with your week 9 task 2 essay when you said that you do or you don't deserve moral praise? So again, I will have you copy a sentence. Kant would agree that I do or don't deserve moral praise for my sacrifice. Kant would say that I do or don't, would not agree with me that I do or don't deserve moral praise for my sacrifice. And then, so that would be your conclusion, your first statement, again, like very much like writing assignments we've done in class. And then you would pull textual evidence from what you actually said in your essay, and you would pull evidence from the reading, and you would support that claim that he would or would not agree that you deserve moral praise. And so that would be 40%. So 20% would be a form that you fill out. And in doing so, you get all the lecture points, all the content insights that you need to deal with those 2 shorter writing assignments, those 2 paragraphs that are pre-outlined for you or pre-structured for you. And so you wouldn't even really need to go back to the SmartBook reading. You could get everything you need from the form itself. Okay, so overall, the idea is that for this one, you already have the lecture points. If you took really good notes with the lecture videos, it's more intuitive. You apply that theory, and you're just showing me that you know how utilitarianism works. I do tell you to argue for the conclusion that your sacrifice is the morally correct thing to do, so I do give you a predetermined conclusion, but you get to focus on just that on just one sacrifice, applying that one theory for that one conclusion. You are going to need about 3/4 of a page to no more than a page and a half. For this one, you have to do a little bit of excavating, but I've made it easy excavating. I tell you where to get the answers, where to get the points from the book, but you get 20% just for doing that. So of course you still have to follow instructions and do a good job with that, but less counts. It's a little bit, so for some of you who are writing challenged, might find it that you get a higher score if you do this one, since 20% is really not a form. If you tend to like the writing activities where I have you take a position in reference to a question and then support that position that forms the first sentence of a paragraph, and you're interested in moral praise and the concept of it, and you're interested in whether or not Kant would agree with your deserving moral praise, and you'd like shorter, chunked writing, then you're going to want to do this one. Okay, so that's all I have for this part, and I will give you further instructions and more details depending on the option you choose. I recommend that you go into both options and open up the assignment documents that go with each one to make your final decision.